So in the last video, we looked at some of the locators and we also understood how they work with respect to Angular JS application. Now let's see it in action, right? So we'll be using some of the locators and build a script, right? So I'm going to add a new spec.js and we are going to build the script from the scratch. Okay, so the first step is to kind of write a new file. Okay, and I'm going to name it demo underscore spec.js, right? So this is our file, and we are going to write the functions and tests here, right? So the first step is to write a test suite in um, in the Jasmine framework, right? So describe is something. It's a kind of function in the BDD framework, right, for Jasmine, where it specifies a test suite in your spec.js, right? So it accepts a string. Okay, so let's say it's home page, and then it accepts a function. Okay, and so it will start here, and then you need to end it, right? So this is the structure of your describe. And then within describe, you can have any number of specs or specifications, right? So that is defined by it. Okay, so that also takes string. So I'm going to name it. It should greet the user and then a function, right? So this is a function, and again you need to end it, right? So this is a basic first spec, right? Or a first test scenario, you can say. What is our first test scenario? So let's go back to our application and look here, right? So what I'm going to do here is we need to enter this name here, QA script, and it should display the text hello QA script on this page, right? So this is the HTML code. Now we are going to identify this element and we are going to write our script. Okay, so identifying our element is pretty much similar to how you do it in any automation script, right? So you need to identify this element. So you can inspect on this element, but if you are kind of comfortable with the HTML code, you can directly refer here because they have provided you the complete HTML code for this particular section or particular page, right? But you can see it's the same HTML code here as well, right? So I'm going to refer the HTML code here since it is comfortable here, right? So throughout this video, I'll be referring the code here instead of inspecting and looking at the same code from the browser. Okay, so let's look at it, right? If you see the input tag, right? So we want this text box. We want to send some keys here. So before that, we need to go to this page. Okay, so for that, there is a, sorry, so browser, okay, browser.get, and then here we are going to mention so our page here, right? So what's the URL here? We are going to grab the URL and we're going to paste it here, right? Okay, so this is our first step where we are using this browser function to kind of go to this URL. So get function is something very similar to what you write in Selenium, right? Now the next step is to enter into this text box. Okay, so it's an input type text box, and this is the type text. This is ng model, your name, right? And this is the placeholder. So what is the type here? Ng model, right? So we have discussed this. We need to use by.model. Okay, so what I'm going to do is we are okay, so element, So now what is element, right? So element is kind of element finder where you pass your locator strategy and it will refer you to that element and then you can perform some action on it, right? So it's kind of element finder which finds the element by your locator strategy. So here our locator strategy is by dot model, right? And then inside this, we need to pass this value, your name, right? Okay, so this is our locator strategy, and then we need to perform some action on this. So send keys, and inside this, we need to write QA script, right? So that's our whole script. Now, the next step is to kind of grab this text, right, which will be entered here. I need to verify this. Okay, so for that, what I'm going to use is I'm going to create a variable here, name text equals to or greeting text. Okay, and that will be my element, and by dot binding, since we'll be using the by dot binding locator here, right? So we have already discussed about this. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to use your name, right? So it will grab the text from here. Right now we are just referring to this element. So in the next step, we are going to use expect. Now expect is something like similar to assertion, right? Where you assert some value. So we are going to use this function expect from Jasmine. So don't worry, I'm going to explain the Jasmine keywords in detail in the later videos. But for now, just try to understand how we are trying to build our script, right? Okay, so this is our expect function, and then I'm going to use this variable here, expect, right? So this is our greeting.text, and then we are going to use get text. Okay, and then we are going to use some equals method. Okay, so now we'll be using this to be method, right, which is kind of equals function, right? So it should be hello QA script, right? So this is our text which will be grabbing from the page and we'll be verifying it, right? So this is our whole script, right? Now what we are going to do is we are going to run this script. So let's go to our terminal. Okay, so we are already in the folder, and one thing you need to do is you need to check your conf.js, right? So there in specs, you need to mention your new file, which you have created, demo underscore spec.js, right? So it will be referring to the spec file. Okay, now once you do that, you need to type Protractor space conf.js. Okay. So as you can see, it has launched the browser using the browser.get method. Okay, just a minute. So I think we need to do save all and com.js demo underscore spec.js, right? So that's correct. Let's run it again. Yeah, so probably did not save the file, right? So that's why it did not work. But basically, so as you saw, right? So as you saw, we got a message here saying it's failed, right? So that's expected because as you can see, the expected text does not match with the actual one, right? So we need to change our expected text, right? So this should be, there is a exclamation mark here. Now, if I run this, it's going to pass. Okay, so let's run it again. Okay, so it passed. In Protractor, right? So this dot resembles one test suite. So one spec, right? And that one spec has passed. Okay. So this was a small kind of script which we created from scratch, right? Now you can do similar things on the different pages which are available here, right? So I'm going to show you another script, right, which is related to this to do page, and we are going to use some ng repeat and ng model in order to grab this list items, right, and do some verifications.